community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and welcome to this Future Friday as we talk all things science fiction and transhumanism and far flung future societies today on this Future Friday. And of course, by the thumbnail and by the worldwide phenomenon that is Squid Game, we will be talking Squid Game as it relates to our science fiction, science fiction tabletop role playing games. And I thought we would take a little bit of a hey Wayne, I thought we would take a little bit of a slightly different look at what it means, what the Squid Games mean as far as thinking about the far future and society. Okay, now let me give you a little bit of a background as concerns the actual Netflix television series Squid Game and how it relates to what we're going to talk about today, so everybody gets on the same page. All right, in the Squid Game television series, of course, we have our protagonists, our characters who are in a precarious situation. And one of the brilliance of of the television series is that, of course, this is heavy spoilers for all those who are completely don't know, but the in the second episode, after all of these people who are in these extreme financial um, straits, they just cannot survive. They were released from the games to go back to their lives, to go back to the situation that got them here in the first place. And they were given another invitation. You know what? If you want to come back, you can. And one by one, I think they in the show they mentioned, at least in the dubbed version, it's like 93% of the individuals, participants that were in it, after seeing other people getting their heads blown off, said, you know what, my life is so bad that I have no other recourse. The only thing that I can think of to make my life better is to go back into these games. So, but there is a parallel in science fiction to the Squid Games. Okay, the parallel being, of course, we have a lot of I guess you could call near future dystopia, where like Hunger Games or Battle Royale and whatnot, any Running Man, any of these competitive game show survival esque type of scenarios where people are thrown into it, but because we're kind of an armchair transhumanist kind of discussion group here, using tabletop role playing games as our framework. I wonder if you could make the argument that if humanity gets lazy enough, if we have enough automation and nanotechnology and communications and 3D printing down to the point where it becomes like micro machine assembly and whatnot. I'm sure even today there are people who talk about the fact that as our lives get easier, what conflicts do we have? What challenges do we have in the future? We have people today who, as a hobby, challenge themselves sometimes to the point of near death, just to for themselves to enhance their skills, to sometimes to um, go where people have never gone before, whether it's psychological, or pushing their endurance, or traveling to unknown places, whether it's in the upper reaches of the atmosphere or the deepest reaches of the ocean. And I wonder if we could get to the point where like many people think that we're going to be like in the movie Wall-E, where we're just sitting in floating chairs and we can barely lift our fingers to change the channel of television and reach over to one side to drink a large Slurpee drink, and the other side to get some hot wings put into our mouths. And that will be the the end all of our lives, except for the people who are like, wait a minute, we need a way to advance ourselves, to challenge what it means to be alive. And I think you could make the case for like science fiction where the player characters maybe are um, they're put into these lethal games, or they've chosen to be in these lethal games. Maybe if they need to be part of an elite squad of soldiers, or defend a number of worlds. We know that there's science fiction where people are placed into situations like VR realms, but they don't know they're in a VR, or they are in like art like a Jurassic Park Hunger Games kind of thing, where they're thrown into a place that's specifically designed to be lethal, but they've chosen to be there, or they made an agreement to be there, not realizing how lethal it was supposed to be. Yeah. And like Wayne says, if education doesn't get better, yes, we could end up like Wally. Yeah, like where you if I don't want to say the forced downfall of society, but maybe there would be like uh political leaders, or corporate individuals, or factions, or AI, or something that's going like, you know what, people, we we're not advancing ourselves. We're not getting smarter or faster, or we're not getting more intelligent. We're not pushing the limits of where humanity can go. So how do we do that? Since we've already solved everything, when technology has solved most of humanity's problems when it comes to food and shelter, and um, access to entertainment, and uh, instantaneous communication and all that kind of stuff. Um, where do people go? Like Mike Gould says in Starship Troopers, citizenship requires enrollment in the military. And if you've seen Starship Troopers, uh, the training to when you join the military to eventually become a citizen, little bit lethal. Like, maybe you don't want to take your helmet off in the middle of a gunfight, but they kind of didn't look over their shoulder after one of their recruits was shot in the head, right? But you know, as now, of course, listen, we every generation of society statistically has had a better life than the one before it. So everyone today, even though we have people living at the lowest tiers of society, in many ways is living a better life than those that came before them. But do we make an excuse for that and go, well, there are people who have achieved great advances for our society, whether it's technological or socioeconomically or something, because of the challenges of that they were placed in. So I wonder if we could create something like that artificially. Would there be a part of society that goes, okay, y- di- like what's the television show, like Naked and Afraid, or Surviving with the Elements, Man versus Wild, and all these kind of things, Survivor Man, and all this kind of business. Would there be a space in society where, hey, listen, when you come of age, we're just going to drop you somewhere and see if you survive, and if you don't, well, but if you do, hopefully you'll be an addition to for the rest of us, and that'd be pretty interesting. Yeah, Deadman says if you've read the book, service is more than just military service. Yeah, it is very much a. When Starship Troopers first came out, I was of an age where I very much watched it as a um, uh, very surface level. But if you look at the funny propaganda stuff, and the pretty vapid, like uh, uh, Gossip Girl, soap opera that was going on in the background, was done completely on purpose. And if you take a look at it a little bit deeper, like Starship Troopers is absolutely positively a fascist propaganda movie, and it's like even to the very end of the movie where they're like dragging uh, the bug queen or bug mind or something out, and they're just like, "Yay, it's afraid!" and stuff. This kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, jackboots and everything. It's pretty crazy. Um, so Wayne mentioned Socrates was also skeptical of just anyone having a say. Service taught thinking as well, right? And this might be a there may be something, especially if it feels like it's hidden, right? Where certain members of society start to grow up and they realize that they have to join a particular service to be accepted into the rest of society, and they have to be challenged. Now, of course, today we do have, while not as lethal, we do have methods and reasoning for challenging people. Like, for example, you guys are bringing up military service. Um, there's a reason why military service is supposed to be tough, right? It's supposed to weed out the weaker members who can't take it, and the ones who do survive learn to mentally overcome their limitations, fear, push past their endurance levels, teamwork, and then, of course, the training with equipment and survival in various environments, plus tactics and things of that nature. But that kind of military training, it could be kind of dangerous as well. People get hurt. There are methods of exhaustion. If you've ever seen, I've never had military service, so I can't speak on it. But there's a lot of documentaries you can see where people are training for like buds and seer training, survival training, survival and escape rescue training and such. And you know, trying to tread water for 20 minutes with a rifle over your head and weights, strapped to your ankles and stuff like that. You could drown, that kind of stuff. And a number of of students have like been, near death, if you want to call it, to survive their training. And crazy, but you know, maybe you need people to do that. And this is the thing. Yeah, it's very much about not having just anyone have a say. And think about today, right? We understand, on one hand, society is like, yeah, we should have complete democracy, that everyone should have a voice in how we proceed in the future. But we all know, even though it might go counter to what our public desires are, we all know that should everybody get an equal say? Because some people have strange desires or motivations that run counter to us moving ourselves into the future. You would prefer that people who are maybe knowledgeable about a particular subject or have devoted many years of their lives to something would at least have more sway over what's going on, even if we agree or disagree with maybe their political motivations, right? If we're talking about, I don't know, developing roads or something like that, you'd probably want civil engineers. You may not want the person who's like, well, I just want a street that leads to my favorite pizza joint. And you're like, yeah, this doesn't have anything to do with you with that. But yeah. Mm-mm. You know what? Dead Man brings up, having a talk with Wayne, says the founding fathers of the U.S. had similar feelings. Only the landed elites would be allowed to vote. And honestly, with the history of voting, that was a thing, right? Where you had to have land, and then I believe it started to move down in different categories where it became like, oh well, you had to be a business owner, or since we're talking about the far future, maybe there are people who, only if you had military service, or this, you served in these killer games first before you were allowed to take part in the greater portions of society, that you had a great role in society. And it could be something that, like, maybe there's uh, the protagonists are like living in a world of ultimate peace and prosperity, and a veritable utopia, but they have to go into like a hellscape in order to be part of that utopia. And they have to, like, they're like, okay, it's not graduation day, but induction day. And that induction day is to like launch you off to another planet, or plug a thing in the back of your neck, and now you have to like um in near real time, you have to survive in this brutalistic world that's artificial. And if you survive, we'll wake you up. But if you don't survive, we'll have to just recycle you and throw you in the hopper or something like that. Michael says, well, looking at a blend of Starship Troopers and Squid Games, consider a society where special rights or privileges are tied to surviving a series of public or broadcast games. Exactly. And we could change the perception of it, because a lot of times when it comes to like survival games, there's always these um clenched teeth, pinky in the air, rich dilettantes. They're like, oh yes, yes, lovey. They're playing games and enjoyment, but it doesn't have to be so mustache twirly with people in the higher echelons. It could be these upper echelon individuals are like uh, military elite who are like drill sergeants training the younger folk. Like, we've already been through this, and we need you to survive. Like, they may even the games. I guess we're going to call them games. I guess we could call them challenges or obstacles. Maybe they get tougher and tougher, knowing that they want them to learn from their past challenges. To go, hey, listen, guys, you're going to need to work together on this next obstacle. Or the obstacle after that is like, you know what, you're on your own. You can't rely on anybody else. Or the obstacles could be, they could have a hidden agenda. Like, they tell you you've got to do the relay race by yourself, but when one of your allies falls, and you'll fail if you try to help your ally who's got the broken leg or something, and you drag them across the finish line last. They're like, okay, they're learning now. They know that they need their allies with them. Like, you could have the teaching, you could have the upfront lesson, and then the behind the scenes lesson, if that makes any sense. I know I'm um summarizing incorrectly here, but I know what I mean, and I think you guys know too. So Wayne says it also teaches you not to be selfish, to team think as well as think individually. Yep. How consider the task at hand, think in group think and organization. Like, for example, what is it, like Navy SEALs? One of their mantras is "work the problem." Right? You're in a lethal situation and you could panic, but listen, you don't have time to panic. You got to work the problem. What's the problem now? How do I solve what I'm in at this very moment with my allies and trust them to get me through to the next level? And then those skills, when they survive, when they come out, on one hand, of course, the people that are involved in it are probably panicked and like, I can't believe society would put me in a situation where I could die. But then on the tail end of it, the survival part is like, yeah, we need people to go through this. And I wonder, as our own society, would we, you you know killer games, would we accept that as a normal part of our society, much like in our olden days, military service served as the same purpose? Because it's not quite that today, but with hustle culture, we kind of measure people that way today. The survivalists, right? The ones who could survive hustle culture, we kind of give them like a pass. Like, oh, okay, they're movers and shakers in society, of an industry or something. All right. Mm, going with our co-host here. Sorry about that. Wayne says, I think, Mr. Gould, we're delving into class warfare a bit there, much like the current global environment, which it that also is a point of conflict, right? Like, as as class stratification, when people go from one class to another class of individual and start to rise up, there's a fear of the higher class individuals that the lower class start reaching their level, and then we end up having more, unconsciously we have more rivals in our group than we would prefer. and that can bring fear, right? Like today, if people are, we have there's a building, not building, it's always been this way, but there's always been a hatred of the haves and have-nots, the people who work and the people who are lazy. And why should I work to help these other people achieve the same level of success by doing less work and I'm doing the more work, right? And this could be, we could take the dials and twist this way up. If you're going through killer Squid Games, the people in the Squid Games realized that they could stop the games and get everybody else paid. And they chose not to, because part of it is like, wait a minute, I'm putting my life on the line. I should get the reward of putting my life on the line. Why would I put my life on the line, get nothing from it, and then all these other people who failed, their people get the benefit from it. And with like lethal style games, that might be part of it too. Like maybe there's a big reward at the end, and the test is, what do you do with the reward? Or maybe it might not be a test at all. It might be, guess what, the rule is you get this big reward at the end and you get to do with it as you wish. And then that promotes the rest of society. That becomes the rule of the rest of society. Mike says, there may even be a physically two-tiered society separated by a city in the sky, like flashback to Star Trek original series, where lower citizens need to participate in these games to earn a slot in the upper city. Yes, yes. Or in a similar, I think it's H.G. Wells, the time travel story, where time traveler story, where you have the Morlocks and the Enoi. I can't. Anyway, you had the privileged people, the utopians, living in one place, and the Morlocks who like basically ate them. It was time machine, and the idea there might be like the player characters, our protagonists might be in the harsher city. Was it the Eloy? The Elio? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Uh, but the privileged class might be where you want to be, but you have to survive the Morlocks. You have to survive the harsh place to graduate up into the upper echelons, and that cycle could keep going, right? The jealousy of, I want to go up the gravity well, classic cyberpunk, William Gibson and Walter John Williams stories, right? Everybody wants to go up the gravity well because you're all like down and dirty on Earth, but you can look up into the sky cities, and but you have to earn your way up, and the earning your way up, it, because the upper people have their thumb on the scale to keep you down, is the test. That when you go up the gravity well, you finally get there. They're like, you know what? Slow clap. You got here, right? That might be the goal, Zamora says, I would say yes, but as far as us accepting it, talking about would we ever accept it, mainly because we already TBJ, either too smart or I'm too slow. Yeah, we already kind of have that, right? Like w- w- every social strata of us, we kind of have our thumb on the scale. We kind of have like there isn't always a reach the hand down and just pull somebody up to our level, right? There is a little bit of not a little bit. There's a lot of, what are you doing to earn your spot with our group, right? Like, how hard are you working? What are you willing to sacrifice? And your life is the hugest sacrifice anyway. Mm-mm-mm. Oh man, yeah, it may well be class warfare considered history of society. Yeah, class warfare. Now, um, while today we very much resist moving from class to class, this could be very above board, where much like in Starship Troopers, everyone knows, hey, if you serve military service, you can become a citizen. This could be very above board. Hey, hey, we have a Earth is Earth is trashed. Everyone's leaving it. Hey, you want to go to Mars? What are you going to do? You want to join the games? You want to survive the games? You've got a 2-year stint, or you have to survive at least 6 games to at least prove yourself. I mean, it's not lethal, but even astronauts have to go through training before they can go into space. Not everybody can become an astronaut. This might be a There might be a very detailed mechanism of testing someone's um, mental and physical fitness, and part of that might be rules that kind of work against them. How willingly are you to work against the rules that we've already set up? Because those people look at the rules at face value and go, "Yeah, okay, I guess I won't survive." Mike says class warfare never went away. Privatized healthcare, access to clean water, how law enforcement treats different classes. Yeah. In Squid Game, the pink suited people were definitely an allegory for law enforcement. Faceless, no opinion, being able to wipe away your guilt by justifying your actions by people who are not paying attention to the rules and not following the rules. All right. Anyway, let me get back to our co-host here. Zamar says, "I guess I will say it anyway. It will be a long one. It'll be a long one. Give me a bit. Okay, not a problem." Mike says, "Consider the city planet of Coruscant in Star Wars. Okay, or Earth in Fifth Element. Lower elevations were poor and higher places were richer. That's all. That's always the case. It, it symbolically, the higher echelon of people love to live in the higher places. As during this pandemic, a lot of people start working from home, and then many workers realized that office buildings, these are big monuments to people's egos, not necessarily needed for doing work. Right? They're basically giant phallic symbols, and for many business owners, top echelon business owners, probably. Anyway, uh, Brayton says there are several games that really show off that type of class divide. The recent Cyberpunk, despite all of its flaws, did a fantastic job at that. Cyberpunk Red, do you mean, or just generally Cyberpunk? Because I loved every iteration of Cyberpunk, both as a general of during like the mid to late 80s novels, and the game itself, the Art Talsorian games. Anyway, Cyberpunk, despite all its flaws, did a fantastic job at that. Another game that did it well is the DLC to the game Frostpunk, called The Last Autumn, in which you have to side either with the workers or with the engineers to finish a generator before a global cooling. Ooh, that sounds like some you'd have to make some tough choices. Like how bad do you treat your workers when you need them to get work done, when the workers are sitting back like, "Stop treating me bad," fold arms, pout, no work, right? And the people who are in control are like, "I gotta get you to work, and that means I gotta break out the stick, the big stick." Mike Gould says the Expanse does this well too. Martian military society has its expectations, and belters are seen as lower class. Yep. Yep. And belters were thrown into the lower class because they were needed to survive in space, right? Someone's got to do the ice mining, someone's got to hollow out the asteroids. Every society needs what's a bad analogy, but here in the States, like, you know, everybody wants to be the chief, but nobody wants to be the Indians, right? It's terrible. Uh, Sorry, Mike. It's a terrible analogy, but it's something that when I was a kid I grew up with. But the idea is everybody wants to be the leader, but you know everybody wants to be the boss, but somebody's got to clean the toilets, basically. And who gets to decide who has to do that job? And not everybody wants to do the backbreaking. Not everybody wants to be the one who's told what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And you do get class stratification where, uh, like a big thing for people who want to move up in the world and move out to the suburbs is that people are like, "Oh, I've got enough money to move to spread my arms and move out in the suburbs and get away from the big city." And then what happens? They move out there, and then all the things that they want have to be built around them, the lower class folk, to serve the people who are the higher class ones who moved away, thereby surrounding themselves with the very people that they want to move away from. So it's kind of like a catch 22. Oh man. Boo, boo, boo. Mike continues and says, "You'll find that cataclysms have a way of exposing what really has value." Yeah, yeah. We're always a hair's breadth away from a cataclysm anyway. Although, to be honest with you, I, you could make the argument the United States uh, has a lot of cyclical weather events that happen here, from tornadoes and hurricanes to earthquakes and drought and fires and mudslides and snow and heat and everything. And people tend to come together more often than a little bit to survive these lethal, harsh weather environments. So on one hand, there is a bit of the post-apocalyptic, I'm out for myself, but on the other hand, you there is a crucible of survival where people come together in those times of need. So I don't know, is that could you count that as part of our Squid Game, where it's not necessarily planned, but it is a thing that happens in society, and we rank people on their behavior during those times. I don't know. Mike says, I believe that Brayton was referring to Cyberpunk 2077. I could be wrong. There's been a number like 2013, talk about the role playing game, and there is 20. I think it's 50 something, and then there's the video game, which is 2077. There's Cyberpunk Red. I believe it was like a meteor impact or something. And the red comes from the dust that was kicked up. It blocks the sunlight, so it turns red. Something like that. I can't remember. All right. Uh, um. So Brayton anyway goes on and says, "Oh yeah, some of the laws in the last autumn outright give you the ability to forcefully break strikes, build a penal colony, or turn the building site into a communist shithole." That's that sounds bleak, but it actually sounds pretty cool. The last autumn, and the person who has to decide to do that to other people, right? Does that make you evil, or does that put you in a position where you go, "Damn, I didn't think I would be this person." But yeah, it's the parents who want their kids to be their best friend, and then their kids to be best friends with their kids, and then they have to lay down the law, and like, this is a dictatorship. Your parents are like, your ass is cleaning your room. You're going to be back here on time. You go blah 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 blah. You know what I mean? It's the it's the benevolent dictator. It's the Black Panther of it all, right? It's like, I can be nice and I can be your friend, but at a certain point, I actually get to tell you what to do, and you're going to do it, or else, right? But Mike says, "Oh, DBJ, my mom used that saying, and she was indigenous." Okay, I wasn't sure how offensive that was about the, we got a lot of chiefs, but no one wants to be an Indian, right? Um, and I think when it comes to like the Squid Game-ishness, because that's kind of what we're talking about. Because remember, the person, uh, um, we're going to get to the person who was wearing the dark mask, and they're the front man, because it's kind of in in the thumbnail. The front man was an individual, spoiler alert, who actually went through and survived the games and became the next front man who continues the games moving on. And in a strange way, part of me would have actually approved of the Squid Games ending with Gihan, Jihan, surviving and reluctantly but psychologically becoming the next front man. I think that would have been an interesting twist to go like, "Oh my god, like, we're clapping our hands like, yeah, he survives," but then at the end of it, he's like, "Oh my god, maybe this is the person I need to be, because other people who were in my same situation should get out of it." And pretty cool. Right. Brayton says, "Yeah, I was referring to Cyberpunk 2077 video game, with its numerous heist missions on rich people that show off the big differences between the ways the lower class and the higher class conduct themselves." Cyberpunk is class warfare. It's like low class, high class. There is no middle ground, and you're always surviving by the skin of your teeth, living in these like, I don't know, what would you call, like, mega arcologies and everybody walking around with some kind of cyberware and guns and backstabbing each other and things like that. Yeah. Yep, and Shadowrun, yeah. 2050 would be Shadowrun, speaking of class warfare. Yep. Brayton goes on to say, the whole point of both Frostpunk and especially The Last Autumn is just how far am I willing to take it to save the world? Yeah, a lot of it is very much context, right? Like if you're a worker, you're thinking of yourself, your friends, your family, and going like, "This fucking sucks," right? I'm gonna pick up a wrench and take down the leadership, the proletariat versus the bourgeoisie, right? And then, but then you move up that level, and let's say you take them down, and now everyone's looking at you like, okay, we need power, we need food, we need water, we need jobs, and you're going like, oh man, that's right, we actually need to have a government. Anarchy doesn't solve everything. What are we going to do? And and when you have to decide who gets food and who doesn't, who is picked for certain jobs, we need. I'm just making example. Like we need 13% of the population to build buildings and roads, and nobody wants to do it. No, how do you make that a good incentive or something? Brayton goes on to say, global cooling is coming. You must finish the generator, but everything is working against you. You gotta be horrible to finish the job. Yeah, like, and are you willing to martyr yourself? Like, do we have? We don't, but maybe we should have politicians who A are willing to make the tough decisions, but B are willing to live with the consequences of making those tough decisions. Right? I mean, in many ways, think about it. Back in the day when it came to warfare, as brutal as our leaders were, if they were on the front lines, they got a lot more respect for doing the things that they did. Yeah, they were murderers, maybe, and devastated, countrysides and kingdoms, but they were on horseback with swords and stuff, right? In the front lines, you gotta go like, I I gotta give you the slow clap. I mean, you put your life on the line. At least you were living the thing that you were doing. I don't agree with what you were doing, but you gotta give somebody credit for that. When you're sitting back in an office and telling other people what to do, it's real easy to make a choice, right? Mike says, rolling into this games for a purpose, we could go all the way back to Rome. Gladiators were slaves, convicts, or volunteers. Survival gained freedom, fame, riches, etc. Yeah, I, I haven't talked about it in a while. If you ever can find the 4-season show Spartacus, what? First of all, excellent show. By the way, excellent show. But th- gladiatorial games were an accepted practice of slavery but reward. Uh, and in the show that we had a character I believe you had to survive 6 games, 6 gladiatorial games in a row. It was something like that. You had to survive like 6 games in a row, or not survive. You had to win 6 games in a row, and this one character gets his freedom. Like he was enslaved, he was a gladiator. He gets out, and everyone's just like, "Hey, congratulations!" And kind of treat it like a celebrity. And the character missed it. He was just like, man, I this just like hanging around and doing nothing. Like, I want to go back into the arena, And yeah, a gladiatorial styled living might be a real thing. Could you imagine? Hey, maybe the player characters are living in a utopia and looking down at these battle worlds. Like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go back down there again. There's something about it. Michael says survival was low. It sure was for the entertainment of the population. Wayne's like listening to all this. My hindbrain is spitting out Death Race 2000. Yeah, yeah, Running Man, Death Race. There's oh, Catch That Pigeon. Um, there's a there's it's a cartoon. Anyway, catch that pigeon now. Whatever the case, but Penelope Pit Stop and all. Anyway, with like death race styled adventures. Like maybe there is a thing of like, you know what, hey, uh, I don't know, Venus is a bad example, but maybe there is a hellscape world where it's like, here's a backpack of equipment, and everyone knows if you stay there longer than 3 weeks, you're dead, and you're gonna have to scramble your way to the pad or launch point to get off the planet and go. Mm-mm. All right, let me take a look at the Discord. There's a long one. Okay, so Zamar says we accept losers in any society. Excuse me, we accept losers in any social game we are in anyway. It's built into our social structure. Look at how getting a job at Mickey D's works. Yep, you get the job at Mickey D's, and if you can survive that, you get the move up in the world, right? Anyway, he goes on to say there are many jobs, but not enough for everyone. So we try our hand, potentially pushing someone else who needs it out of the way. Technically, they don't survive, as no guarantee they will get another job or another chance to get the same job. So let's just call them dead. Okay, okay, I see where you're going. Let's continue with this. The pay is far too small to survive from that point, so you are forced to climb the ladder. Thus begins the second part of the games. All right, you fight with those who hired you to move up positions. Step on too many toes on the way up, people hate you. They group up against you. They will drag you down when you're weakest or drop you completely. Hell hath no fury. Yes, absolutely. Rise too fast, too good at your job. Now you are a threat to those above you. Yep. They will stifle your rise or force you to fall because those with power ultimately want to keep it, for good or ill. And when you reach the top, you find out it's not all it's cracked up to be. The top leads to another ladder to climb. Ooh. Now, lastly, anyone else can see at the bottom of your ladder, though, is that you made it to the top. You're the enemy now, the goal, the target. Yeah. Got to slow clap you on that one there, Z. Got to slow clap you on that. Ooh, man, you guys jumped ahead of me. Okay, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Because thinking about like the idea of moving, doing this, like because listen, we use the analogy of a ladder in the first place, and you there's a rungs of a ladder as you climb up, and of course if you climb too fast, you're looking at the feet of the person above you and you're trying to push them out the way of a ladder. It's dangerous. And then you have people below you. If you're not moving fast enough, there's people coming from below you trying to move up who want to move past you. So you're trying to move fast, but you also don't want to offend the person above you. But listen, you can't hang on to the ladder forever. So yeah, I love it. I love it. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. I love it so much. That's an awesome one there, Z. That's excellent, excellent. Michael says I have vague memories of a fictional piece called The Lottery. Yep, where those who won were given a short-term life of luxury, but were killed after that. I think there is a short story called The Lottery about getting stoned to death, but for some reason I do feel like there's a fictional piece where you're given short-term life of luxury and then killed afterwards, and I can't remember what that was about. Hmm. I don't know. Oh, I got a sneeze coming up. I'm so sorry. Sorry. Anyway, Brayton Tamont says I actually think that there is a sort of middle class in cyberpunk. Okay, specifically the fixers and the solos. All right, okay, they gotta move and maneuver between the upper class and the lower class, and trust only their instincts and their guns in order to stay alive and make a lot of money. All of which are looking for that one big job. I I I could see an argument made that some would say that like the player characters in cyberpunk aren't middle class, but they are the best at what they do versus everyone else, right? Like they're above street gangs, they're above the homeless, they are above uh the plug heads, the mindless drones that are just plugged in and getting high on better than life chips and things like that. So I could see it's a middle class. It's a very tenuous one. I'll agree with you on that part. I think tenuous one. It's pretty cool, and I love your very last comment, last two comments here, Z, where you say, for good or ill, and when you reach the top, you find out it's not all it's cracked up to be. The top leads to another ladder to climb, and anyone else can see at the bottom of your ladder, though, is that you made it to the top. Your enemy, you're the enemy now, the goal and the target, and that is very much a cyberpunk thing because uh, I it's funny because we joke about this at work. I'm a letter carrier, a postal carrier worker, and we joke at work because sometimes we'll have a coworker that's like, "Oh, I'm going to move up into management," or like, "I'm going to transfer to another craft." We call them crafts, like truck drivers, mail handlers, window clerks, even management. They're each different. They each are a different craft, and we joke like, "Oh, so you're getting out of prison, right?" There's the good luck for getting out, but at the same time, I hate you for doing it, kind of thing. Like, oh, you think you're better than the rest of us, or maybe I'm not living my life good enough to get out of the thing, you know? So there's always that, "Hey, I'm happy for you. I'm also jealous of you," kind of aspect. And taking it back full circle when it comes to like lethal Squid Games or something, I'm sure there would be a um, I didn't survive. You didn't join the games and I did, and I survived, so I'm better than you. But then there's also the well, I only got 3 games through and I decided to quit versus the I got all the way to the end, right? Because you'll have those people in the middle as well. Military, if depending on what you are trying to achieve in the military, if you fail out, if you ring the bell, you leave, there on one hand, some will say, "Well, hey, I tried to go through it and you didn't." And then there are people who went through it are like, "Oh, you tapped out? I don't really have respect for you." You know? Oh man, Mike Gould says a cyberpunk middle class would be the salarymen, okay, corporates above the street people, but minions of the upper echelons. Yeah, that's a tenuous place to be, crushed in the middle. Because like Z's comment, there's always people trying to scramble at what you have, and there's people above you trying to keep you down. And there is a bit of the starving wolf versus the starving wolf concept of the people at the top ensuring that the people in the middle are constantly fighting each other and they're to ignore the machinations of the one above, right? And ex- um, as long as there's hope, there will always be people who will support the system, the machine, rather than tear it down. Because if you think about like let's go back to there's two opposing rules in Squid Game that are pretty funny, but are very much an element of society. And out of the 3 rules, there's the 2 that are completely opposite to each other, but make perfect sense. One is you must compete in the games because if you decide not to compete in the games, you're eliminated, you're killed. But then the other rule is the majority decide not to play the games are canceled, right? So if enough of us decide we don't like something, it gets changed. But as long as the rule exists and there isn't a majority, you're wrong for going against the rule. So we eliminate you instead. And there is that like, how can we get I don't, not real unions, but how can we get enough people to unionize together to become a union of thought to change a system when you're the one who's raising their hand and you're looking around like, oh my God, please let 51% of the people raise their hands because right now they got a gun in the back of my head, right? And uh, even challenge games, it would be pretty hilarious to have like these killer challenge games. And a way around the challenge games would be to not for everyone to decide not to play the challenge games, but because there's a great reward at the end of it, no one decides not to do that. And the player characters are like, damn it, we could have got out of this if we just decided not to do it. And then the person who wins at the end is like, yep, fold arms. I'm above you now. F you. You know? Brayden says, if you're above all the lower class and can easily mess with the middle men, below the upper class, isn't that a strong argument for them being the middle class? Ooh, yes, but I'm going to agree with you because I agree, but I'm still going to stick by the fact that that's very tenuous, right? That's the it feels to me like a house made of cards where yeah, you're stuck in the middle, but it's like treading water. Okay, you're in the middle of a lake and there's a boat and the shore and you're treading water and that's the middle that feels like the middle class right there. You're like as long as I'm treading water, I'm fine, but I'm going to get tired and I'm either going to drown or I can swim or I'm going to have to make the choice to swim the shore which is far away or swim over to the boat and there's people in the boat that don't want me in it. So what do I do? Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I agree with you, but wow. Will this all appear? Okay. Brayton goes on to say, as the late great George Carlin said, oh man, he's a master of the language of language. Anyway, the people at the top get all the money and keep the lower and middle class fighting so that they can keep going to the bank. Yep, yep, that would be awesome. Now, I, I, I hmm, I guess it would be very difficult to. I mean, like Squid Game basically more or less upfront said, "Hey, listen, we've got a lot of money above your head. Do the thing, you get the money, and you already know that we're playing games with you in it." So, um, in a sci-fi type of thing, type of setting, like maybe there's a I don't know, like a wormhole that leads to a some kind of utopian, or like there's some kind of ascendancy for player characters and like aliens or something, and it's like, hey, these aliens are living in another dimension of time and space. But you can only get there if you go through these. The aliens created this crucible that you have to get through, and it might be very above board. Like, no, yes, there's space for everyone to go. No, they're not going to accept everyone. What are you willing to do to to achieve this goal? And then people are measured on their behavior and how they do it, and are they brutal and do they step on the people to get there, or do they hold to their moral code or whatever? I mean, there's a bunch of that stuff. Zamora says it's sad because I tried to jump from traditional work to voice acting to get off the ladders, yeah, and now I am climbing three different ladders at once just to survive, one of which is voice acting. Oh man, well, first of all, um, I have zero knowledge about voice acting, but good for you. Um, art art is funny in that it doesn't quite follow the same mechanisms as like a worker bee like myself. Uh, it's a weird. It's like a one off, like you said. It's a third ladder because it doesn't follow the same mechanisms and stuff. Which by the I'm going to mention something. Which by the way, here in the U.S. a there might be a union strike by members of the entertainment industry that do um uh, they are the workers in the entertainment industry. So like they're like key grips, they are set designers, makeup, hair, costume design, um, and they are being worked to death and they might strike. So Monday might be a strike, in which case many, if not all, of the television and movies that are being filmed currently might be put on hold if they do strike. It's pretty, and it's because of worker conditions. Pretty crazy. Braitman says, "Oh, I absolutely agree that it's a shit position and that you're walking on very thin ice. But that's about the only place that is proper middle class in that world." Yeah, yeah. Mm-mm-mm. Crazy, crazy, crazy. We always go to like how we're living and trying to survive today. And oh, okay. I'm sorry. You guys are talking together, and I'm gonna bring up Mufa's comment too because I meant that's what made me think about going to this particular thing. Anyway, it says Mike says, I'm married to a healthcare professional. I've been employed in the printing industry for 35 years. We're barely paying the bills. We're struggling. Yeah. Yeah. The living wage argument is a big one, right? Because on one hand, people are saying, um, like, as a if I have a business, I can only pay my workers the amount of money that my business brings in, even if it's not a living wage. And then other people are saying, yeah, but your business won't survive if people aren't making enough money to spend that money to enforce your business, which comes down the middle, which is this new thing about UBI, which is universal basic income, where the idea is it's not about society and having people work. It's about people being consumers to keep the economy going. And what we really aren't workers. What we really are money spenders. We are each member of society is an economic engine. In order for that economic engine to work, it is better to give them money to keep the engine going, to keep the economy going, which generates money for those people to get the money to spend it back again, which is a strange way to think about it. Like, wait, we should just give people free money? And it, it's it sounds like I'm cussing. It sounds like I'm calling your mom a bad name, right? But that's essentially the idea of rethinking of what universal basic income is, and changing our mindset and going, okay, wait a minute. If everybody is at a certain level of society, they have like food and shelter and clothing and are able to survive, and they have the basic needs of survival, and that stress no longer exists, then it's a crazy thing to think about. But I mean, I think of that and go, I get it. And I know other people think about it and go, yeah, I'm probably going to load my shotgun. you know, Mufa says Paizo employees just formed a union. I heard. Yes. Um, I know people think of unions as something just shy of pure evil, devil spawns. But I'm here to tell you that unions only exist because of treatment. People don't normally unionize unless they are given if they are unless they are not treated fairly. And so unions form because of the treatment they suffer at the hands of their employers. Some employers are really great, others are terrible. And if people are not getting paid and compensated or rewarded for the work that they've done, usually starting at a simple respect level, but then there's money, there's time off of work. Working conditions are just as important as money. So um, fighting to have a bigger place to live, fighting to work less hours, fighting to not have specific deadlines, to have deadlines extended, or um, uh, um, time off of work to handle children or sick relatives, and daycare, and vacation time, and not, I don't know, what do you call, like, not having to stand out in heat or cold or floodwaters or something like that. Um, uh, those are things that people fight for too. So unfortunately, yeah, yeah. Now I don't know the details of the unionized Paizo employees, but that's usually what ends up happening. It's usually worker conditions. uh not to get too personal with anybody, whatever, but like Mike says, I can tell you from where I sit that the economy is breaking down because of the corporate markup on basic goods. I can tell you how much that tea you wear costs to produce, and I'll bet you have paid like 1,000% markup at this point. You know what? I don't know if you guys have heard this, but did you hear of the clothing apocalypse that's has arrived? That clothing is so cheap to make that upwards of like 90% of all clothes produced gets thrown away, even after it's moved down the economic ladder of like the name brands, and then the secondary market, and then like goodwill markets and things like that. Like, even after that, that it's just easier just to throw it away. It's crazy, but yeah. Yeah. Mufa says, yeah, unions tend to be a lesser evil. Yeah, it's exactly right, because then Unions get dues. Dues mean money. Unions make money from the employees, and then they can also extort money out of their employer. So, yeah, yeah. But if it wasn't for unions, we wouldn't have. Yeah, like Mike Gould said, unions have given you a 5-day work week, an 8-hour day, right? Higher pay, paid benefits, paid vacation, any vacation, safety measures. Yep. If it wasn't for unions, none of that would exist. Child labor. Unions have gotten rid of child labor. Yep. The problem is that unions have become corporations unto themselves. Yep. Absolutely, they sure have. Mufus has agreed. Just would be better to not have them, but people can't behave themselves and treat others fairly. Yep. That's exactly why that's why a union. I mean, a lot of people say unions ruin the auto industry. There are unions that exist for like road work and going like. I mean, on one hand, you drive down the road and you see construction and you're like, there's 15 people digging one pit, right? Like what? Like why are we paying all these people just to sit around and do nothing? And everyone goes like, fold arms. This is stupid. Unions are stupid. And you're going, yeah, but they're also standing on the side of highways with people who kill them, working midnight, working long hours over weekends. What is it? Working like uh, um 7 to 7, at night to 7 in the morning hours. What are the other people? Here in the States, we have snow warriors, the people that are trained and they do like 18-hour shifts getting snow off the roads and stuff. You best believe they should get paid premium hours. You know, yeah. Hell, police and fire have a union so that they get treated better, right? So yeah. which which twisting this back around to like the squid gamification, if the majority in that game, in those games, they could have unionized and said, you know what, we don't want to play this anymore. And if the majority of them said they wouldn't, okay. Michael's responds to Mufus says, humanity is a predatory species. Without unions, welcome to the Industrial Revolution again. What we need to learn and not is not to be assholes. Kind of difficult because being an asshole gets things done, unfortunately. Unions did not ruin the auto industry. Automation killed employment because robots don't have unions. Yeah. My comment on human greed yesterday, it's going to hurt a lot of people eventually, as what Zamara mentions. And yeah, it's unfortunate because money is the way we measure things, and greedy people measure their success by getting more of that money. Because we see that where greedy people put their names on buildings and monuments. Um, they name things. It goes past purchasing things. It goes past us regular folks winning the lottery. It gets to the point where, well, it's not about me being rich. It's about me being richer than other people, and so it becomes a measurement of like it goes beyond. Well, do I have the biggest yacht? Do I have a home in the most expensive place to live? Oh, I've got a home in the Riviera. I've got a home in penthouse in New York City. Oh, I also have one in Malibu in California. Oh, I've got another one in my own private island. And then even after that, they're going like, well, how else do I measure my success? Oh, I'm going to name a college after me, and buildings and stadiums, and it goes on and on and on, and basically becomes, colloquially speaking, it becomes a measurement of genitalia, right? Like my genitalia is bigger than yours, or is more appealing than yours, I guess, for all our ladies and pronies out there, right? And it's like, well, could you do that without hoarding all the money? And again, going back to Zamara's point about the ladder, yes, a rich person could make other people's lives better by raising them up, but that means you are literally feeding the people who are going to take you out. The fear in the mindset, right? If I make these people's lives better, that's going to give them more fuel to overcome my status. And chances are most people probably don't care about your status. They just want their lives better. But there's that ambition. Michael says ambition can be good when it betters the greater good. The problem is that it's often tied to greed and the desire to control others. We need ambition without being toxic. Yeah, and how do you do that? Maybe AI systems could do that, which don't aren't jealous. They aren't afraid of you taking over. I don't know. Reminds me of Bender's "Remember Me" statue. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh man, Deadman says, NYPD officers union is currently saying just do what you're told to do by the government. Okay, though many union personnel are beginning to change their stance or get pushed out of the union. Hmm. Hmm. See, that's and to me that's an issue, right? Like, because I have a very bad and non-traditional method of how I feel like um, police should be changed in the states. I feel like cops should get paid. I feel like we should double their salary if we're going to demand people in those dangerous positions to do a thing at a extremely high level. I think they should be compensated for it. So I expect the best, highest professionalism and integrity out of our law enforcement. I think they should get paid for it. Start them at what would his starter salary be, like 35 grand? Start him at 70 and max out at like 250 or something like that. If you're going to do a dangerous job like that, I feel like you should get paid, but you need to do it, right? The result of not doing it is severe punishment. But I think if you're going to do it, get paid. Just like we treat military pretty badly too, right? Pay them or compensate them. Maybe pay isn't the right word. It's compensation. But maybe I just think differently about that. Wayne says we no longer teach things like humanity, yeah, morality, philosophy, metaphysical thinking, etc. as basic education. We sure don't. It's all about it's all hustle culture. Get yours. F the other person, right? Until we do, society will always take the basic selfish path. Being human should happen. Excuse me, was the rest of the comment? You have to teach. You have to teach people to think outside of the self, and it's unfortunate because the smaller the group, when you lived in a tribe, you had to think of others. You couldn't just think of yourself because if you wanted to get fed, you had to work with people. If you wanted to survive a storm that's coming, the entire tribe had to work together. You need to travel and follow the migration of the animals. You had to work together. You didn't have time to dwell into your own head about things and stuff. You had to put aside a number of your own desires and put off your own desires temporarily for the greater good. And unfortunately, we have the ability to not have to live in the tribe or live in we have the ability to not live in the tribe we're in the closest to because we can use social media to live in a tribe that's outside of us. Zamar says charities has the wealth fight issue as well. Yep, there is a brag about how broad their reach is, not about how deep into the situation their reach goes. Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, charities. My charity is bigger than your charity. My charity has a private jet. My charity has fundraisers that are in the most expensive places. Isn't that a dichotomy? Michael says, if you want better people in emergency services, have better training. Stick to your qualifications. Yeah, yeah, better training. Um, I heard a special forces guy talk about police training, and he's like, we'll train 6 months for a mission that takes 6 hours. He's like, for police, it's the opposite. They'll give you 6 hours of training to do something for 30 years. He's like, yeah, it's crazy. Um, I also think PTSD has a lot to do with it too. Um, uh, Police, medical, fire, teachers. I think mental health is a thing, and I'm not talking extremism. I'm talking about spectrumism. That I think some people need to be taken out of their people who serve special needs individuals, people who are included in that as well. That I think quality goes down when their mental stress goes up, and constantly being put in a situation where your mental stress is always being tested makes them worse, I think. Wayne says police shouldn't do as they're told. They should uphold the law and think about constitutional and human rights and only uphold that. Yep. Yes, they should be paid more. So should teachers and social workers. Hells yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because when you get tired, you drop the ball. And that's just simple. Like, we don't allow truckers to drive 24 hours. We or airline pilots to fly planes for 24 hours. They are forced to take a rest. And I think certain jobs should be forced to, like, listen, you every time you put your uniform on, you see evil. So then therefore everyone you see is evil. There's a correlation with that, and you need to be I think people need to be taken out of those situations, or it just ruins them. Zamar says, and I will admit there is a feeling that comes into getting into a French money fight with someone. Okay, quote: I have enough money to out donate that poor man next to me, except I lost that fight. I I'm more nicer than you are. Yeah, yeah, both ways. I get it. Yeah, yeah. There is a little bit of the of the giving snobbery. There's quite a bit of that as well. Michael said, "Teachers, good teachers are the backbone of every society." Yeah, it's difficult to put a price tag on that, though, isn't it? Right? Here in the states, we constantly have teacher strikes, and teachers are constantly being education is constantly being put on the chopping block as far as cutting things, because fixing a bridge and paving streets has a physical representation of where money goes, but education, how do you measure that? They're fifth graders. They haven't graduated years before they graduate. How do you measure that? It's tough. And when it comes to numbers, people, and when it comes to the public, very difficult to do that. Anyway, guys, we've gone pretty late in this. It kind of diverged well away from Squid Game, but maybe we didn't. Maybe, just maybe, we are already living in a virtual reality of a higher echelon alien species that is testing us in our own world to see how we survive before we move on. Yeah. Mike says education, you'll find, is the basis of a successful society. When education falters, ignorance rises. Ignorance has risen. Yeah, like, I agree with you, Z. Yeah, I guess it might be time to call this stream. Remember, taking the black pill sucks, but gotta do it sometimes. Yeah. I hope I'm that pill. Guys, have a great one. I will see thee later. By the way, I will, of course, you guys know that the level up 5e Kickstarter is going on, blah, blah, blah. All that information is below in the doobly doo, whatever. But there will be videos coming, like especially Mondays and Tuesdays, which are going to be shorter. There won't be any like interactivity on them, even if I do them live. But they'll just be like these little shorter snippets about a subject or something. Maybe some videos on Saturdays and Sundays will be shorter. So I want to get back to doing more broad content, but they won't be interactive. Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays will be interactive, but the rest of it, yeah. Hey, and Wayne Bex, it says, "Was nice being here once again. Thank you all for the interesting chat. A toast to our host. Ooh, toast to the host. I gotta make a T-shirt about that. Guys, have a great one. Thank you, Wayne, and everybody else, Deadman and Z, and everybody for being. First of all, thank you for being both brilliant and reasonable and like just expressive about your opinions. Agree or not to agree, there's nothing better than having excellent uh excellent discourse. I wish I could show that emoji, but I can't. So thank you guys for bringing that brilliant, positive, inclusive energy. That going like, hey, listen, I don't agree with what you're saying, but here's how I'm going to say it, and I absolutely, positively appreciate that, because you guys know a lot of times it's live. I get caught up. My brain starts to like get really fuzzy, and I'm like, oh man, I don't know what to say, but you say it for me. So I'm like, shit, yeah, that's it. So thank you very much there, telling me I got this. You got this too. Guys, have a great one. I will see you later.